This is the nation's Conspire channel. Welcome to today's show. Massive quote-unquote solar storms have caused communication blackouts around the earth, specifically over in Africa and the UK. They are claiming that they got hit with back-to-back solar flares. Now, depending on what your beliefs are, me personally, I do not believe that solar flares are real. You have every right to believe what you want to believe, but of course, a lot of the reports that we get about solar flares and the images that we receive are all from NASA. So you obviously don't just take that with a grain of salt. You should automatically just discredit it and realize that any information you're being fed is usually 10 times out of 10 misinformation. And one of the things that they want out there is this narrative of solar flares. There's multiple narratives in regards to a massive grid shutdown and a massive attack that would destabilize countries, which would shut off all electronics, including cell phones. It's really the ultimate way to perform a great reset. And many people out there haven't been paying attention to that. They think that the Great Reset already occurred. You're talking about shutting off electricity in all nations. That would literally probably kill 9 out of 10 people if they do that for a full year. All planes in the sky would likely crash. All refrigeration would be shut down, which means we would lose the food supply chain that includes massive warehouses that have food, of course, grocery stores, etc. Clean water would not be able to be accessed anymore. You wouldn't be able to access money. You wouldn't be able to access any prescription drugs that you might be on. And of course, the SCADA systems would all be shut off. Nuclear facilities would all be shut off. We're talking fires, floods. There would be no access to any help whatsoever. It would really create utter chaos. And there's multiple narratives that they want out there so that when something like this happens, that you think that it's one of the narratives that you're being fed. One of the narratives, of course, is the solar flare, which is what they're pushing here. They've been doing this every single year. They've been putting stories out there about solar flares disabling communications. The other, of course, is a cyber attack. They've been programming you with a lot of predictive programming through movies, including the one that just came out called 0 Day, getting you or trying to get you to think that when a grid shutdown happens, that it's some type of event that's not caused by your own government, that it's either caused by some type of natural occurrence like a solar flare, which they feed down your throat and cram down your throat, or some boogeyman in the middle of a factory in Russia or China shutting off the United States of America's electrical grid. And again, don't forget, a couple of weeks ago, Spain was in total blackout for a few days. They still haven't figured out why Spain was in a total blackout, but the U.S. could be next. And that's clear to me that these are obvious test runs as they're preparing for a massive EMP, which I'll get into later in the video. But even the World Economic Forum this week warning of growing cyber threats to energy infrastructure following the latest blackouts that have been occurring around the earth. But this is the propaganda they're putting on the news. And remember, they put this out there because they're planting seeds in your mind for a future event. And they want you to think that this is why it happened, because they cannot afford to have the people rise up against the current governments around the earth who are all responsible for doing this to their own people.
Almost 94 million miles from Earth, a powerful light show on the surface of the sun. The bursts of radiation are the strongest solar flares so far this year, but issues flaring up back on Earth. Shortwave radio blackouts have been reported on 5 different continents. A NOAA forecaster says the flare today occurred as the sun was over the Middle East, adding to the disruptions.
So there's an 11-year solar cycle, and right now we're kind of at the peak of one of those cycles of activity.
Scientists say the geomagnetic storms are caused by massive flares of plasma from the sun, specifically sunspots.
The X-rays that are coming out of those flares are actually striking a layer of our Earth's atmosphere that we bounce radio waves off of. And it's actually deforming that layer and causing a lot of disruptions.
Smaller flares happen regularly, but when they get strong enough, they can light up the sky in the form of aurora borealis in select corners of the world.
This is actually so sick.
Sometimes outbursts, turning skies pink and green further south than usual, bringing a light show to lucky residents in places like Chicago, Pennsylvania, even as far as Alabama this same time last year. Scientists say the sun reached its solar maximum last year with its largest flare in October. When the Earth gets bombarded by streams of charged particles, the flares can also disrupt cell phone service, GPS, and satellite communications. They can even wipe out power grids. And in space, they can actually put spacecrafts and astronauts at risk. All of it causing a firestorm online.
As we just had a powerful X2.7 solar flare.
Nobody's talking about what these solar flares are really doing to your energy.
As for that major blackout in Spain and Portugal a few weeks ago that grounded planes and disrupted hospital operations, Spain now launching an investigation. But so far, nothing to indicate solar flares are to blame, despite viral speculation. And at the center of all the activity in the last 24 hours, the sunspot known as AR4087, currently not directed at our planet, but rotating towards it, meaning the Earth might be out of the line of fire, but not for long.
Marissa Parra is joining us now. I mean, who knew, right? Could this thing get bigger? Like, could this explode more in the days to come?
Well, Hallie, let me explain it this way. So this, what we saw just now with AR4087, this was an extremely, and by the way, a rarely powerful storm. You can see the categories. This was the most strong type of solar flare. But here's the thing. This was not even Earth directed. So, Hallie, this rotation is going to continue so that AR4087 is Earth directed with the next coming days. So even if it's not as strong in the X category, Hallie, it could still have a major impact for us down here on Earth. That's tracking with the next few days, May 16th and 17th. So we'll be here.
Bottom line, right? Watch for the potential for more of those comms blackouts.
So again, depending on what you believe, most people out there who are awake do not believe in solar flares. Of course, there'll be some who say that they do. But remember, this is stuff that's getting fed to you from your government. This is stuff that's getting fed to you from NASA, these images they supposedly show you of the sun and these solar flares. So what we do need to pay attention to are some of the things that you heard in that video, because they're using things like the Aurora Borealis, the northern lights, to convince people out there that this is a naturally occurring event. They said, look, when these solar flares happen, you'll see the Aurora Borealis in the sky. You'll see you're going to see the northern lights in Alabama and in Florida, right? But what they don't tell the common sheeple out there is that scientists, quote unquote, or should I just call them psychopaths, up in Alaska for the last couple of decades have been using your tax money to actually transmit radio frequencies into the sky to create artificial auroras. And most people out there, when you tell them that they actually can make artificial northern lights, think that you're crazy, but they actually admit to doing it. Causing artificial aurora over Alaska. This has been happening week after week after week. What they do is they play and manipulate the ionosphere. They shoot energy into the atmosphere and they bounce it back onto the Earth. They don't want you to know about these things. They don't want you to know that they can create simulations in the sky. They don't want you to know that they're taking such high forms of energy to manipulate the atmosphere that it's causing lots of events to happen on Earth that they want you to think are naturally occurring events. And another narrative that's been out there, which I covered a couple of months ago, actually a couple of years ago, and again, all these videos have been removed from every public platform. They're available on the website, but I talked about the Carrington event. They've been programming people with the Carrington event. You probably know of the Carrington event because they want you to think about it and know about it. So the alt-right media, the conservative media, has been putting reports out there talking about a Carrington event. The event apparently occurred in 1859. It refers to the most powerful geomagnetic storm ever recorded. It caused massive solar flares that released a surge of electricity, charged gas, and subatomic particles towards the Earth, resulting in severe disruptions to telegraph systems, intense auroras, and even sparking and fires in some telegraph offices. And Tucker Carlson, who we all know is an agent, okay, he's been exposed many times. I've exposed him about a dozen times, even the last couple of weeks, showing him at the Freemason Lodge doing his interview with a UFC fighter, his bracelet that he obviously wears, the Pilgrim Society, which he is a member of course. These guys pretend like they're censored. They leave platforms, go to other platforms. There's no censorship. They're promoted all over the place. They're still promoted even by the mainstream media. The CNNs of the world, the NBCs of the world will still put clips of Tucker Carlson on their news so that they stay in the public eye because they want to keep them in the public eye. And one of the things Tucker Carlson was pushing, along with government asset Dennis Quaid, who plays one of these conservative actors, one of these ones that always shows up on Fox News, is that they're guaranteeing you of a Carrington event coming in the future. They want you to think that this is going to be a naturally occurring event, but it's not. Here's the programming they put out on Tucker Carlson about a year ago.
There is a 100% probability that our sun generating what they call a GMD, which is a solar storm. It's our Earth magnetic field that we have around the Earth. It can fry everything that is electric above the ground, including our entire grid.
And this would happen organically, naturally? That's just what the sun does?
There was they call it a Carrington event, which happened in, I think it was 1859. Basically, we had telegraph lines as far as electricity. And it fried our entire telegraph system. It had to be replaced. And
the entire thing? The
entire thing. Imagine what that would do now. There's 100% chance of it happening. 100-year event, they call that one. And
I'm not good at math, but
in the trillions of dollars, it would take out not only the electricity, but all of our entire infrastructure and our society runs our electricity. We don't know how to live without it. There wouldn't be any water in your tap. You couldn't get gas for your car. Everything that we rely upon would be gone. The food would melt in our refrigerators. And they predict within a year, about 90% of the population would be dead from starvation, disease. It gets back to the Stone Age again.
Well, that's shocking.
Yeah, so
a bit of information.
It really lifts your day, doesn't it?
It does. I'm adding that to the Armageddon file that's growing.
Nobody's on something that might occur, but this is definitely going to occur.
Just what nature might do.
Yeah, this is not what you call an enemy. This is the sun that we rely upon every day, and these solar storms that happen. Everybody's seen, pictures of the sun where the storm is happening and these flares come out and they're ejected out into the solar system. I think it was 2014, we barely missed one by 5 days. And it's going to happen. And then, once it hits the Earth, there's a 50% probability of it either being us or the Eastern Hemisphere, who's ever exposed to that's the sun.
So, an event like this happened in 1859, and it took out our entire telegraph system. And yet we built a system that's vulnerable to it.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So you might be saying, well, they're talking about a Carrington. How do we know that it's not really a Carrington event? Well, we know for sure one thing. We know that DARPA and our tax money has been funding our government developing high-powered electromagnetic weapons, EMP weapons, microwave weapons. How do we know this? Well, they admit to doing it. We just saw some of these high-powered microwave weapons, also known as directed energy weapons, another form of a high-powered electromagnetic weapon used obviously on Lahaina. And, some people obviously have seen some of these directed energy weapons that were used to direct energy and frequencies at people's smart meters to blow up homes. Your governments around the earth have the ability to wipe out the Earth's power grid, which would result in something greater than a great reset. It would result in the deaths of billions of people. The outbreak was not part of the Great Reset. It was just part of a phase in it. This would be the ultimate coup that they could pull. And DARPA is actively involved in developing and researching high-powered electromagnetic pulse weapons, and they've got it mastered and they're ready to roll it out. So you're seeing testing done in locations like we just saw or heard in Africa, in the UK, in Spain a few weeks ago. They want you to think that these mystery power outages are all occurring because, well, the power grids are weakened. Cyber attackers are coming after it. But the reality of the matter is that they're ready to roll. And by 2030, you can expect a massive power outage around the Earth in many specific locations. Here are some clips about EMPs for people out there who are not familiar.
Some of the weapons the military gets to play with these days are straight out of science fiction. Things like railguns and laser cannons. Well, now you can add one more to the list, the electromagnetic pulse device, or CHAMP. Here's how it works. If you can focus enough energy on a target, you can fry any electrical system in use, whether it's computers or the wiring for lights. Electromagnetic pulse phenomena, or EMP, was first observed during the testing of nuclear weapons. But fortunately, the CHAMP device doesn't require a nuclear explosion, or any explosion at all. Like they said in Ocean's 11, where they used one to rob a casino, it's like a bomb, but without the bomb. So, when does it go into service? Well, according to the Air Force, it's already deployed, along with the LAWS laser system and that long-distance heat ray thing.
Newt Gingrich. Asked during the debate to name the security threats that worry him, Newt Gingrich lays out 3 scenarios: a weapon of mass destruction in an American city, a cyber attack, and something many have never heard of:
Electromagnetic pulse attack, which would literally destroy the country's capacity to function.
An electromagnetic pulse attack, or EMP. It's been the stuff of fiction on the Fox show 24.
It's an EMP!
But it's also a real threat, experts say, and it likely wouldn't look like that. An EMP attack, they say, is an intense burst of electromagnetic radiation. It can be triggered by detonating a nuclear weapon at high altitude, a weapon that could be launched by a rogue nation or a terrorist group with access to it. Detonated low to the ground, atomic weapons have a devastating physical shock. But detonated miles up in the atmosphere, experts say, the main impact is electrical, energy that doesn't kill people but spreads like lightning, striking any electrical grid or circuitry, feeding into them, burning them out. Whole cities could go dark. Security analyst James Carafano has written about EMP attacks.
In one single event, what could be disabled?
If you had a large-scale EMP event in the United States, everything would be disabled, because even things that weren't knocked out, let's say your car, which might be okay, but the electrical grid's going to be gone. There's going to be no way to do traffic lights. There's going to be no way to land ships. There's no way to get fuel to the gas stations to refuel your car. And if you got them there, the gas pumps wouldn't work.
Think of this fictional attack in the movie Ocean's 11. We demonstrated electromagnetic interference on a much smaller, less threatening scale at the University of Maryland, showing how magnetic fields from some electronic devices often interfere with other devices.
You hear this ringing behind me? We're showing you what electromagnetic interference is. Say this television is a car. The car's function is rolling along normally. Here's a cell phone ringing. When it gets close to that, you can see how the audio of the television signal changes. You can hear the interference. That's essentially, it's interfering with the car's function.
But with a large-scale EMP attack, experts say, computers would fail, telecommunications cut off, bank accounts inaccessible. They say that's because the transformers that power many electrical grids take a long time to manufacture and transport. And with transportation knocked out by the attack, that prolongs the isolation.
So your government isn't developing those types of weapons to use on another country. You think America is going to use that on Russia or on China? These governments have been developing this technology to use on you. This is how you bring in poverty. This is how you kill off populations. We talk about the Georgia Guidestones, when they deliberately blew those up, right? And took the time capsule out. Of course, they don't want you to know that. But remember the Georgia Guidestones. Population, 500 million. Well, we're supposedly at 8 billion. And there's a lot of work to still be done. The people who went and poisoned themselves, some of them are still walking the earth. Doesn't mean that they're going to be walking the earth for very long. But if you shut the grid down, you will cause immediate deaths to people. You will cause mass hysteria. We're talking about food and water being completely scarce. Nobody will be able to access any of these things with a grid shutdown. Most people will lose their minds just by not having a phone. In fact, people whose phones get disabled, and some people will be able to avoid complete shutoffs of actually having electronics, because some people will have transistor radios. Some people's electronics may survive. Some people may have them in actual Faraday bags and things like that. But the narrative that's going to be out there when it does occur, because there will be a narrative circulating around it, is going to be this mystery as to why it happened. And you're going to hear them push propaganda on you, because some people will still be able to access communications while others won't. People will likely completely, their heads will explode when they wake up and see that their phone is off. They'll be more concerned about getting their phone turned back on than they will be concerned about actually finding food and water. They'll probably just be laying in their room, continually pressing the on button, trying to plug it into the wall for about 10 hours, going to their car, not realizing that an EMP would wipe out their car battery likely, trying to start their car just so they could charge their phone, right? Maybe then, of course, we'll have Starlink completely hooked up so people will have access to, maybe if they could find some type of generator to charge their phone, whether you have one of those, a generator that you could use for solar power generator, like a Jackery type of thing to charge a phone, right? Those will be the main concerns of the majority of society when this does actually go down, before they're actually thinking about food and water. It'll be about 12 to 24 hours before they realize they need food and water, and then they'll stop thinking about their phones, and then they'll be like, oh crap, I don't have enough time to actually find food and water because I've spent most of my time trying to figure out how to get my electronics back on so I can go on TikTok and be entertained, right? But we've seen the predictive programming out there, and we know how they operate, right? Here's a few of the very, known predictive programming films out there, including Leave the World Behind, that have shown us the world getting hit with an electromagnetic pulse, cars shutting down on highways, planes falling out of the sky, because that's what it would look like if your government uses an EMP on you.
I went online this morning and I rented us a beautiful house out by the beach.
Oh, this is nice. This looks so happy.
The Wi-Fi isn't working.
I'm so sorry to bother you, but this is our house.
This is your house?
We were driving back to the city, then something happened. I need to think everything's gonna be okay.
We are seeing ongoing cyber attacks across the country.
Something is happening, and I don't trust them.
I would do anything to protect my family. What you do is your business.
Get in the car right now!
Haven't you been picking up on what's going on out there?
Whatever it is, it's happening to all of us.
What is the truth?
Very, very carefully.
Look at that.
It's all going to turn off.
What?
It's going to turn off, and it will never, ever turn back on. Everything is going to turn off.
Ben, did I lose you?
No.
So EMPs have been something I've talked about for a couple of years because it's important to remember them, because there's all these other clouded voices coming in from around you that are trying to convince you that if something like this does occur, that it could be a natural event or it could be a boogeyman that they just make up in Hollywood. You know, they write in a script that say it's a guy in a hoodie, he's over in a cave somewhere in Afghanistan, or he's in Russia and he wanted to shut off America's power grid because he wanted to kill billions of people and be a mass psychopath, genocidal madman, right? But the reality is, our government has admitted, all these people who are rich and powerful, like Bill Gates, have talked about depopulation. That's all they talk about. And they're still allowed to walk the streets, and they're still allowed to be the richest people on earth. They still go on talk shows and flaunt how they believe that the biggest threat to America or to the earth is population, and they need to have population control. And everybody in the crowd laughs when they tell you it. They want everybody dead. These people admit to it. The biggest, you know, how many times have we heard the Ted Turners of the world, the Rothschilds of the world, the Rockefellers of the world, the Kissingers of the world talk about population control being the biggest threat to humanity? That means they need to kill people off. And the easiest way to do it is to shut off electricity. Our society is 100% dependent on electricity. And I'm not sitting here acting like I'm not dependent on electricity, because I am as well. We all grew up in this, where we've taken things for granted, like food and water and electricity. And they know by shutting off a grid, it would wipe out the majority of the earth. And then, of course, when they turn it back on, because it would only be temporary, they know how compliant everybody will be just to have electricity back. And then when they talk about rationing electricity and everything else because of the carbon footprint, most people will go along with it because they'll never want to live without electricity again. And that's, of course, if they live long enough to actually see that day, because many people will not live very long if there's an extensive blackout that occurs. And again, nobody will look at their own government as being responsible for it because of all these things they put in people's heads about solar flares and cyber attacks and how our grid is vulnerable. These are stories after stories after stories that have come out over the last couple of years, and they come out for a reason, because they're out there to program you. Remember, the news isn't to inform you, it's to condition you. And when these things occur, they want you to believe that it's a narrative that they tell you ahead of time so that you never look at them as being the ones who are responsible. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.